What is up, fam? It's your boy Sunil. Thank you so much for tapping in today with So Real Sports Talk. Today, we are doing a preview of UFC Vegas 32, Sandhagen versus Dillashaw. Now, we were going to have a special guest to do the play-by-play preview with me. However, I think we got some timings misunderstood or whatnot, so I'm gonna just go by myself. So if anybody has questions or whatnot, go ahead and throw them in, and we'll talk about them. But to start out, this card is a pretty stacked card. Overall feeling is I'm pretty excited about it. It's obviously the main event is showcasing two of the best bantamweights in the world with Sandhagen and Dillashaw. But this whole card, top to bottom, is showcasing some names that you've heard of and some names that you definitely are going to hear about, moving forward. So there are 4 bantamweight fights on this card, 2 on the prelims, 2 on the main card. And I believe personally in the UFC, the bantamweight division has now overtaken the lightweight division as the most entertaining and most competitive division in the UFC. From top to bottom, 1 through 15, you have studs all over the place. You even have guys like Umar Nurmagomedov, who aren't even ranked, I don't believe, that could be champion based off of just the skill set and what they've shown in the octagon up until this point. So the ability to showcase a card where there's going to be 4 bantamweight fights, that's going to be butter, baby. So let's get into it. Let's start out with talking about which fights on the undercard the fans should pay attention to. And there's one that I believe could have made the main card just because of the style of the fight. Once again, it is a bantamweight fight, but it's between 2 people that have been doing an amazing job online, promoting the fight and building their own following, as well as 2 people that are just able to finish fights with authority. So that's going to make for a really fun fight, and that's Adrian Yanez and Randy Costa, right? So these are 2 bantamweight people that are up and coming in the division. Both have made a name for themselves with the way they've been able to finish opponents in the octagon in the few opportunities that they've had. For my money, I'm putting it on Yanez. He's just had a little bit better competition, and I think he's been more decisive as far as the wins that he's had. So overall, I think that's going to be a really great fight to pay attention to. But up and down the preliminary card, there's also some great fights to pay attention to. So don't just tune in for the main card. Make sure you tune into the undercard, because those are the future stars, and you get to start becoming fans of fighters before everybody knows their name and UFC is able to give them the big push or whatnot. And Yanez and Costa are 2 of those type of fighters that I feel like could be big stars in the UFC moving forward. So pay attention. All right, so let's go into breaking down this main card. Basically, we're just going to go through the fighters, the fight card one by one, and kind of give some picks. So Mickey Gall and Jordan Williams is the first fight on the card. This fight obviously is kind of a mixture of some people that are in predicaments in the UFC. So Mickey Gall obviously is a name that you might be able to recognize. He's been up and down in his UFC career. Had some nice wins, has some tough losses. Jordan Williams has had 1 fight in the UFC up until this point. Unfortunately for him, that was a loss. So this is kind of one of those like possible make or break fights for these fighters, because both of them haven't really been able to really sink their claws in the UFC and prove that they are legit UFC fighters that are going to be able to contain week in and week out and be in like top 15 title contender type of fighters. And we all know the UFC, that's who they're really looking to keep. If they believe that you're not going to have a chance to either be an electric performer that could, build a following and be, at least a draw in the UFC, or you're not somebody who can really be a title contender, your career with the UFC isn't going to be too long. So that's kind of what I believe this fight's about. I probably give the edge to Mickey Gall just because he's had more experience in the UFC. He's already proven he could win in the UFC. Jordan Williams was a prospect that came up, fell short his first fight. Probably is going to feel a lot of pressure coming into this one to actually get a victory. So we'll see. It could, pretty much a toss-up. I don't really have any strong feelings either way, but I'm just going to go, with Mickey Gall just because I've actually seen him win. So that's that fight. The next fight we are going for is a women's fight. It is Miranda Maverick versus Maycee Barber. Now, I am actually feeling like this is going to be a pretty good fight. One of the more exciting fights on the card. And this is, once again, matchups makes fights. So Maycee Barber, as you may know, was somebody who had a lot of steam behind her when she first came into the UFC, right? And not only that, she also had put it out there that she was going to be the youngest champion ever in the UFC, and really hasn't been able to live up to those expectations that maybe the UFC had put on her, but more importantly, the expectations that she put on for herself. So she had, some tough losses, but, is coming back. I think she's putting together, I think she won her last fight, if I'm not mistaken. But definitely looking better. Seems like she's humbled herself. No, actually, she did lose her last fight. She's lost her last 2 fights. So, but she definitely needs to pick one up, right? She definitely needs to get a win to really maintain her position in the UFC. And she's taking on Miranda Maverick, who also is an up-and-coming fighter in the UFC. I really don't think Maycee Barber has enough to be able to handle Miranda. I think Miranda is going to be able to take this fight. She has shown the ability to win in the UFC. She's coming off a good win in her last fight. For me, I think Miranda is going to take this one. So I edge it to her, but I do believe this is going to be a good fight. I feel like Maycee, you can't if you're going to give her, if you're going to say anything about her, you can't say that she doesn't give up. She's always going to show up to fight. And, that can be something that we see, moving forward. So get excited about that. That's Miranda Maverick versus Maycee Barber. All right, so we are going to move on to the next fight, and that is Darren Elkins versus Derek Minor. Now, this fight actually, I believe, can be a pretty exciting fight. Once again, styles make fights. Both of these guys, once again, at one point were people who were looked at as guys who could actually contend in the division. Elkins has had some good wins in the UFC. Also, is coming off, a loss. Minor, I believe, hasn't had as many fights in the UFC, but is a contender. And I believe that both of these guys love to throw and love to fight. So this is, once again, one of those fights that I think could be a pretty exciting one. For me, I don't really have strong feelings either way as far as who I believe will win this fight. But I'm going to go – let's just go with Minor. just because, you know, he hasn't, I believe he's still, this might be a second fight in the UFC. I've seen Elkins fight. Elkins is really, really good. I bet on him a couple times. However, I've lost those bets. So I'm going to go with Minor just because every time I pick Elkins, he turns me down. All right. So that's that fight. Now we're getting into a fight that I'm super excited about. So the fight that I'm looking at right now is Kyler Phillips versus Raulian Paiva. All right. So this fight, I think, has all the intention to be one of the fight of the nights. Okay. So Paiva is somebody who up and coming, just had a victory against the dude from Kazakhstan who just had that brutal submission in last week's pay-per-view. The name's slipping me right now. But Paiva actually took him to a decision. And seeing the way that I think it's Zumagulov, or maybe, yeah, is it Zumagulov? But seeing the way that he actually took that fight and won in a clear decision shows how tough of a fighter that he actually is. However, to me, Kyler Phillips is a superstar. He is 3-0 in the UFC. He is I believe, one of the top guys in bantamweight. And the reason for that is just his mix. He is a very complete fighter with the ability to wow you. Kyler Phillips is one of the fastest bantamweights. And to say that in the bantamweight division is pretty impressive because everybody in bantamweight is pretty fast. But Kyler Phillips' speed is, I believe, second to none in anybody in that division. He has the ability to throw some unorthodox, flashy strikes, plus isn't somebody who is going to let his emotions take hold of him in the fight, as shown in his last victory. Even though he's able to, you know, really use his fight IQ, and if he needs to fight a measured fight, maintain distance, and not put himself in any danger, he could win that way. But he could also win by devastating knockout or submission. To me, he's one of the most complete fighters in bantamweight, and I believe he's going to be contending for a championship very soon here. So with Kyler Phillips versus Paiva, even though I believe Paiva is a very game fighter, and this is going to be a tough test for Kyler Phillips, I think Phillips takes it. I believe, like I said, he's somebody who's going to rise in the ranks to bantamweight, and definitely be somebody who is fighting some of these big name fighters sooner than later. All right. So definitely check out that fight. I think it's going to be one of the most exciting fights on the card. The next fight is the co-main event between Aspen Ladd and Macy Chiasson. I might be pronouncing that last name wrong. But this is a fight that, once again, styles make fights. Macy Chiasson is somebody who's kind of had an up and down career in the UFC. Aspen Ladd is somebody who is making a huge kind of ascension. You know, she's been on a bit of a winning streak here with the UFC. And I believe somebody who, you know, is going to be contending for a title. She's ranked number 3 right now. You know, one more very impressive victory sets her up to be in contention for the title. And I believe she gets that. You know, Chiasson just had, I believe, a victory over Kuniskaya, who is no easy fight. But I believe Aspen Ladd is just too aggressive, too skilled, and is really going to, you know, take this fight and have something to prove to really become, you know, the next contender to fight for the belt. So I am edging this to Aspen Ladd. And I know we ran through those fights pretty quickly. And the reason for that is because I wanted to spend the most time talking about this main event. All right. So this main event obviously is Card Sandhagen versus TJ Dillashaw. And just to set up why this fight is so important. So for those of you that may not know, TJ Dillashaw used to be the champion at bantamweight. He won the title in a huge, grudge match with man, I can't believe I'm slipping on the name right now, but it was a huge fight between him and it'll come back to me, guys. But Cody Garbrandt, there we go. So what an idiot. But anyways, TJ Dillashaw versus Cody Garbrandt. This fight was, the fight. These guys were former teammates. They hated each other, and all of that showed in that fight. TJ Dillashaw getting a chance to not only win the title, but also being able to defend it against Garbrandt and, prove that he is the bigger man. Now, back when a couple years ago when Dillashaw was the champ, back then, champ was a huge thing to be able to do. It was all the rise. Everybody who had the ability to be champ was trying to be champ. And Dillashaw tried to do the same thing by moving down to fight Henry Cejudo for the title. Now, Cejudo ended up waxing him, finishing him in a matter of minutes in the first round. But what came out after that was a dirty urine test, and he was actually popped for EPO with USADA, right? So doing that is obviously terrible. That obviously is a performance enhancer. No way around it. It's not something that you could just say, oh, by accident, I ingested. No, that was definitely something calculated. And it was a pretty hefty suspension. We haven't seen Dillashaw there for 2 years. So Dillashaw never lost the belt. He actually was stripped because of the suspension, and he hasn't been active for 2 years. In that time, Sandhagen has become one of the top bantamweights, right? His last 3 fights have been extremely exciting. One of them, obviously, he dropped being, submitted by Aljo. That was going to be that was actually a number 1 contenders fight, which is why Aljo went and fought for the title against Jan. But since then, Sandhagen has put together a streak, and not just beating people with big names, but beating people with big names in devastating factor. So he had, one of the sickest finishes with, I believe it was Morales, which was just devastating. It looked scary. Morales was out on his feet, fell to the ground really, really hard, came back to fight Frankie Edgar, and ended up knocking him out with the flying knee. So Sandhagen has fought 3 of the top bantamweights back to back in his last 3 fights, and decisively has won 2, and lost 1 obviously to Aljamain Sterling, but feels like he could get that one back. And really, because of how Sandhagen has defeated his last 2 victories, he's already the number 1 contender after whenever the settled fight between Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan is for the title. He could have just waited and he would be the next guy up just because of what he's already done. But for him to accept this fight against Dillashaw shows me the kind of heart and mentality that a guy like Sandhagen has. He is not afraid. It reminds me a lot of that mentality that Dustin Poirier is having right now, where he's like, look, I believe I'm the best fighter in this division, so I'll fight anybody. And if I am who I believe that I am, I'll beat them. And eventually I'll get my title shot, and eventually I'll prove that I am the champion. And that's exactly what Sandhagen's doing. This is not an easy fight. TJ Dillashaw is a beast. He's a savage. The last time we saw him in the ring at bantamweight, he was waxing dudes. And he has a very herky-jerky style, very unorthodox type fighter, and he's a killer. He's not going in there to be friends with anybody. He's going in there to finish fights. And he's a tough guy to be able to figure out his timing. And this isn't an easy fight. But for me, the reason why I believe Sandhagen is going to win this is because Sandhagen has been active against killers. And Dillashaw has not been fighting for the last 2 years. So in my estimation, I'm always going to pick the more active fighter, especially one that's going through the basically like the guillotine at bantamweight. And like I said, I believe bantamweight is the toughest division in this in the UFC at this time. So for Sandhagen to have the type of streak that he had, that he's having, to come into this fight against Dillashaw, I just think this is a tough fight for Dillashaw to come back to. This isn't a warm-up fight, man. If Dillashaw wins this fight, he deserves to be the #1 contender and deserves to fight whoever wins out of Aljamain Sterling versus Peter Yan. So I get why, why Dillashaw would do this. Is basically like jumping the line. Because if you do beat Sandhagen, which obviously Dillashaw believes he can do, he's right there next in line to be able to fight for the title. But I'm drawing a lot of similarities between the last Poirier and Conor fight to this fight. We obviously have the bigger star and the bigger name in Dillashaw, just like Conor was to Poirier. But Poirier was going through the gauntlet in the toughest division at the time, which is lightweight. And he was beating everybody. The only person he's lost to at 155 in the last 5 years is Khabib. And everybody loses to Khabib. And now looking back, you look at that fight, and for the prime level that Khabib was at, the person that gave him the most fight, in my estimation, is Poirier. Poirier had him in the most danger of anybody actually in Khabib that I've seen Khabib fight. With the guillotine, Khabib even admitted that was a pretty it was pretty deep, but obviously Khabib's Khabib and was able to get out of it. And because of being more active, developing your skills to the point that Poirier was able to do, he went in and pretty much dominated Conor. Obviously, Conor snapped his leg, which ended the fight, but it was trending in the direction that Poirier is winning that. I believe Sandhagen is Poirier in this example, and Dillashaw is going to be Conor. Dillashaw just hasn't been active, and no matter how hard you train, no matter how hard you spar, there's just not the same level of aggression and that same feel that is being in that octagon and fighting, the best of the best. And Dillashaw is going to have to deal with the mental, right? So he already showed weakness in taking the banned substance, taking EPO, taking a performance enhancer because he feel like he needed that edge to fight Cejudo. Whatever his excuse is, it boils down to a mentality thing, thinking you needed to cheat to be able to compete. And now he's going to be going in as, one of the most hated fighters, right? The fans aren't going to be happy with the guy that, blatantly cheated, especially to win a title. And I believe Sandhagen is a fan favorite. So is TJ Dillashaw going to come in with the right mentality? Is he going to be able to have, the timing, and is he going to be able to just, come in and contend with the guy like with Sandhagen? Because Sandhagen is a fast starter. It's not somebody who's going to ease into the fight. He's going to go and try to do something crazy to finish this fight and finish this fight early. And if Dillashaw isn't on his P's and Q's, this once again could be a fight that is finished early. However, I do believe Dillashaw is better than the last two fights that Sandhagen has. So I don't think these are going to be, a first round finish. I do think this could get into the third or fourth round. But I do believe that Sandhagen is going to win this either stopping by some kind of either a TKO or some kind of submission. And I'm assuming it's going to be somewhere in that third or fourth round. I don't think this fight's going to go the distance, but I do believe, Sandhagen is going to take this and really solidify himself as the #1 contender in the bantamweight division. So there you have it, guys. There is my take on UFC Vegas 32, Sandhagen versus Dillashaw. I'm picking Sandhagen to take this bout by TKO in the third or fourth round. Like I said, there's a ton of great fights to pay attention to in this card. So make sure you tune in. Until next time, guys, keep it so real.